Hi everyone, welcome to Quinta do Crasto, our wonderful property in the Douro Valley. So today we're going to guide you through a typical day in the harvest, but more of that later. My name is Miguel Roquette. I am the proprietor and also marketing manager of our estate. And Crasto makes red, white, port wine, and we also produce some olive oil. We are located halfway between the villages of Régua and Pinhão. So we are in the Upper Douro, and we have a train station right next to us and also a dock in the river where you can arrive by boat. Our property here has approximately 80 hectares planted, but we also have two other properties in the Douro, one a little bit further east with 10 hectares and one up to the Upper Douro with 114 hectares under full production, called Quinta da Cabreira in the Douro Superior. Crasto is it's quite old. It's actually one of the oldest properties in the Douro Valley. Our first references date back to 1615. This is what you can read in the front gate. There are two dates, 1615, when the property was established, and 1918, this is when my great-grandfather bought the Quinta. So we celebrated in 2015 400 years of existence, and in 2018 we've celebrated 100 years in the family. My father invested in the Douro quite a lot in the 80s. He bought the shares of the family, and we've done ever since huge investments in terms of our vineyards, in terms of our facilities and wineries. And in 1994, this was a landmark for the history of Quinta do Crasto and for our family, because this is when we have released our first dry wine. We had obviously stocks of older ports, such as vintage and late bottle vintage, but in 94 was the first vintage for a dry wine, and this is when we started exporting and exploring the world market. The project in 1994 started in a very small quantity. The first production was around 25,000 bottles of a Douro wine. This was made by an Australian winemaker called Dominic Morris. He worked with us for 5-6 years. And nowadays it changed a little bit. Now we have 3 different properties in the Douro Valley, and we're producing approximately 1.5 million bottles of port wine, red wine, white wine, and also rosé. And everything is special here. Of course, from the dramatic views and terraces of the Douro Valley, you can see our old vines and the new terraces. We have vineyards growing at river level, again 600 meters in altitude. We have new cellars, traditional lagars where we crush the grapes by foot. And we have a vegetable garden where we can source all fruits and vegetables organically. Lots and lots to see and to explore. We have obviously also two very well-known references in terms of old vineyards, which is our old plot Vinha Maria Teresa and also our tiny little Vinha da Ponte. Both of these plots are over 100 years of age. They were replanted by my great-grandfather once phylloxera was controlled in the Douro, and these are two very special terroirs in the Douro that you can visit. And last but not least, we also have our famous infinity pool that is very famous and everyone wants to see. The view is absolutely stunning, and you're all invited to come and have a swim with a glass of wine and enjoy the view and a relaxed day. Well, lots to do once you are here. The main plan is to relax and to enjoy the view, enjoy the nature, breathe the fresh air. But we can do lots of things. We can do a guided tour through the vineyards and through the facilities. So you can visit the wineries, you can visit the oak room where we have 1,600 barrels sleeping under temperature and humidity control. You can have small tastings, you can have lunches, dinners, and there's also availability in some of our rooms for overnight. So apart from that, you can bird watch, you can walk around, you can explore the vegetable garden, you can go down to the river and have a boat ride. So it's endless, the choices that you have once in the Douro. a typical day at the harvest, it's usually very busy. Lots of work happening in the winery throughout the year, but in the harvest, this is obviously the most important part of the year for us. Usually the harvest starts at the end of August and runs for approximately 5 weeks here at Crasto. We have around 80 people working with us. Pickers pick the grapes, they bring the grapes in small plastic containers to the winery. We have a selection of the fruit. The fruit is crushed mechanically or by foot, and after that we ferment the wines, whether it's a port wine, a dry wine, a red wine, a white wine, it depends. So it's very, very complex. Obviously we need to pay attention to climate conditions and to choose the optimum day to pick specifically vineyards. Keep in mind that, as I said before, we have vineyards growing at river level against 600 meters altitude. As our winemaker used to say, this is truly a puzzle, and decisions have to be made daily. Well, to choose the perfect ripening and the perfect time to pick the grapes, this is done in very different ways, but I think it's overall it's a gut feeling. We have a lot of experience. We have over 100 harvests behind us, with lots of records from my great-grandfather, from my great-grandfather, and also from my father. And we do know that some terroirs behave differently than others. But I think at the end it's a matter of walking through the vineyards, look at the grapes, check the phenolic maturation, and at the end it's just taste the fruit and decide when it's ready to go. This is just the way it's done. It's pure. We have to understand how nature plays, and we have to make the proper decision. This is how it's done at Crasto. Well, a typical day in the harvest starts early in the morning. So we get together, all together, the pickers. We decide which part is going to be picked, and everything has to be organized with great care. The fruit arrives, and then there's work to be done in the reception center. So we have a conveyor belt, we do a selection of the fruit. After that, there's also work involved in the crushing process, whether it's mechanically or done by foot, and also work at the winery, for sure. But in the harvest, the main work is obviously done by the pickers, and we select specific parts according to the maturations, according to the age of the vines, according to the altitude, according to the sun exposure, and obviously the varieties that we're picking. So usually we have approximately 80 people involved in our harvest, not only from the pickers, but also people in the winery, in the reception center, also in the lab. And for us to have a smooth harvest, everything has to be organized quite well in logistic terms. The day starts very early, around 6 o'clock in the morning, as soon as the sun comes out, and it runs all the way through sunset. So once the grapes are picked, they are moved into plastic containers. They hold about 25 kilograms, and the fruit arrives untouched to the winery. This is very important. So we don't want any crush fruit, because once the fruit crushes, it starts fermenting. The fruit arrives, it goes through a conveyor belt where we have a very selective triage of the fruit. There's always leaves and grapes that might come in poor conditions that we want to separate. And after that we do a mechanical crush. So basically we destem the grapes, and the fruit moves into what we call the lagars, which are our granny tanks, where we apply, it depends on the wine that we're making, but in the lagars we can do a mechanical crush with robots, or we can do crushing by foot. And all of these decisions depend whether you're making port wine, whether you're making dry wine, whether it's a white or a red. So it's quite complex, but everything runs in a very smooth way. Well, the harvest day ends for the pickers when the light goes down. That's as simple as that. But inside the facilities, it never ends. There's constant work to be done. Even when we're fermenting port lagars, as you know, the fermentation happens naturally, so we cannot choose when it's the time to stop fermentation. So inside the facilities, I would say that during the vintage, the work is 24 hours, 7 days, non-stop. Well, once the harvest is concluded, the work goes on non-stop. And I think it's, of course, the vineyards will be done, so we have no more fruit to pick, but everything else is in very active mode. There's constant work in the winery. Obviously, we are placing some of the wines in oak for barrel fermentation. Some of the wines are kept only in stainless steel tanks. So we do bottling operations, we do blendings. There's lots of testings and lots of analysis to be done in the lab as well. So it's a constant work. It's a non-stop work throughout the year to make sure that everything that was done in the harvest will result in good quality wines. So obviously during the harvest there's the need for the workers to rest a little bit. For the guys that are crushing the grapes, they also have to rest. They do it for approximately 4 hours non-stop, and they take a break. But a typical day, we get together at the end of the day, we look at the results from the day, we check how much fruit arrived, what's the quality, what has been picked, what still has to be picked. So we run, you know, an analysis to see how it's going. At the end of the harvest, this is a big day. We usually have a very traditional get-together, so we get all the workers together here for a big lunch. We have a firework session, which is typical in the Douro, where everyone will know that the vintage is done. The pickers will go up to the main house. They'll bring some flowers and the Crasto with flowers and grapes. They will read a poem to the proprietors. Then we have to make a speech, hope to see them again next year, of course, because we all depend on human labor. It's extremely important. But it's a very, very traditional celebration. And at the end of the harvest, the job is done, at least the job in the vineyards is done. And this is when we celebrate the results accomplished. After that is, like I said before, work in the winery, work in the cellars, blending, testing, bottling, labeling, and finally selling the wine. So to sum it up, harvest, vintage time is the most important part of the year. This is the result of 12 months of vineyard management, or 11 months of vineyard management, and this is where we get the results of all the passion, all the knowledge, and all the efforts and the work that we've done in the vineyards throughout the year. It's a fantastic time of the year to visit the Douro, very busy, and I think it's important to book way in advance, but it's fantastic because you get to see the tradition, the pickers, everyone singing in the vineyards, you get to see the crushing of the lagars. It's fantastic. You can also try and jump in one of those tanks, hard work though. You can see the vinification methods, you can see all the aspects that involve a typical harvest in the Douro. And obviously, at the end, we have always to celebrate with a great bottle of wine, get everyone together and wait and hope for good results. This is how it works.